Hello, everybody. How's everybody's Sunday doing? Mike, you doing all right?
Oh, I am surviving, Brad. I am surviving. Or trying to, at least. Well, hang on. Let me just... Okay, there we go.
Seems fair.
Knock on wood real quick.
This is 2020,
Yep.
so... Yeah.
Not ruling
Guys,
anything out at
hello.
this point.
Hello, everybody. If this is your first time joining us, I'm Brad. That's Mike. We're Dallas Geek. Thank you so much for giving us a little bit of your Sunday to talk nerdy stuff.
I don't know if this is really nerdy, though.
It's cinema, and to a lot of people, cinema is pretty nerdy, especially if you're analyzing it.
That's fair. That's fair.
Eh.
Oh, hang on. Hang on 2 seconds. Sorry. Mic check real quick. Let me just...
Ah,
There we go.
that's fair.
Can
I
I
thought
show-
for a second you
can
were
I
about
show
to
what-
check your fantasy football.
No. But can I show what I'm drinking? Is that going to get us flagged for...
I mean, we're not sponsored by them, so we're not beholden to anything for them.
Well, I'm trying to get sponsored by them. So...
I mean, if you want to go ahead and start sucking up early.
I especially
Fail.
love the cherry doc. I especially
Sell
love
out.
cherry Dr. Pepper.
Sell
I-
out.
If it gets me free Dr. Pepper, you're damn right I am.
With that,
Tastes
Guys-
like sellout. Which tastes
Uh,
delicious.
guys, if this is your first time watching us and you want to check out more of our stuff, please do not forget to like our video and follow us over on Facebook, or like the video and subscribe over on YouTube. And if you want to be able to check out our content but don't always have time for the videos, you can check out the audio over at Apple Podcast, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcast, and Stitcher. So we would love to have you everywhere, anywhere, whatever you want, but we just love having you as an audience. So, yeah.
I mean, I feel like the 90s porn music in the background really fits with the we want to have you anywhere, everywhere. That you just made.
This is definitely not 90s porn. This feels a lot more 90s cheese.
I don't know.
90s porn has
This
a lot
is
more
pretty-
bass.
There's a good amount of bass in this.
It's more horn. It feels a
That's true.
little bit closer to Ska-lite, but not quite.
It's true. It's true.
So, now that I think we have scared off all of the normies,
We have
guys,
to watch us?
Mike, what are we talking about today?
Politics.
Actually, that's not
See, this
entirely
is-
wrong.
I was about to say, this is the one time that I can make that joke, and it's really not technically a joke.
Yeah. So for
So
those
we're
of you who
talking-
didn't know, and chances are that's a lot of you, last Thursday was the 80th anniversary of Charlie Chaplin's The Great Dictator. And if you can't guess by the title, it's a little bit political. But it's amazing. It's one of my top 5. Actually, it kind of goes back and forth as my number 1, depending on when you ask.
Depends
And
on how you feel
it is
about
one
George
of
that day.
8 movies that Charlie Chaplin has in the Criterion Collection.
Yep. Yep. Think it is recognized in the Library of Congress as
Yep.
oh hell, what's their whole spiel about cultural and
1997,
significant
it was inducted in
historical-
their National Film Registry.
There you go, thank you.
On behalf of, what was it? Artistic, historical, or aesthetic merit.
Thank you. Yeah.
It was-
no, this is
I mean,
widely
yeah.
regarded as this is widely regarded as one of the more important pieces of film ever made, not just necessarily political satire film, filmed in general. And if I'm not mistaken, I think this was his first non-silent film, if I remember right?
Yep. Charlie
So, I
Chaplin
mean,
had a
there's
thing
historical
where
significance
he
to that as
was
well.
vehemently opposed to being in a talkie, as it was referred to at the time, essentially a movie with recorded dialogue. He started off as a silent film star. He was determined to stay that way. In fact, his featured character, the Tramp, as he put it, will never speak. That is never going to happen. And then the 30s happened, and Hitler became a thing, and what was happening in Germany and to the rest of Europe hit him hard enough that he decided that was the one time he wanted to break his own rule and speak.
Now, I will say, I think, if I remember right, I think I've read that in interviews that he did later on. Obviously, he's no longer with us, but before, before he passed, and kind of the historical context of it, looking back, like in the 50s and 60s when he was interviewed about it, if I remember right, I think he said that if he knew exactly the atrocities that was being committed, he would have never made the film.
So it wasn't so much that, it was that his biggest regret was that his signature look was so close to Hitler that that similarity haunted him, but not nearly as much as the fact that Hitler and Charlie Chaplin were born 4 days apart in the same year and in almost identical conditions. And that similarity in their whole upbringing just absolutely got to him. Like, throw in the similarity in aesthetics, and it just, he couldn't get past it.
Well, like, they were both artists, right? Like, that is the one thing that history technically... Well, that's the one thing that everybody that doesn't follow history forgets about Hitler, is he was an artist before World War I broke out. Yeah. Like, he was a dude that was just painting and had some not so great ideas, to put it lightly, but nothing that got to the point that he got to, at that time. And then World War I breaks out, and then Germany is saddled with having to basically repay the world's debt to rebuild the world. Everybody in Germany gets pissed off, and this Austrian-born failed artist basically starts talking about how the world needs to pay for what they've done to us, and one thing leads to another, unfortunately, and boom.
Yeah, and
I spark noted that quite a bit, but
Well, I mean, keep in mind, The Great Dictator came out in 1940, which means it was being created in the late 30s, when, as far as the world was concerned, Hitler was kind of a almost non-issue as far as America was concerned, and most people outside of Europe didn't really see him as much of anything beyond just a very loud political leader who had some fairly extreme ideas. And it wasn't until around the time when this movie came out that it became painfully obvious to everybody that there was a lot more to it than that. And it was very... I think problematic is too light of a term. Yeah. But yeah,
also, just to... Sorry, continue.
No, from a historical perspective, this movie is maybe one of the best things that any history student can watch, because it really does a good job at being more or less accurate with the ideology of what happened, while trying to break up the seriousness of it in just the right moments with a little bit of humor, even though, in fairness, the humor in this movie isn't what you would call typical Charlie Chaplin humor. It was more dark in tone.
Yeah. Yeah, this was, I mean, it was a real departure for Chaplin, but at the same time, it's like, well, I mean, it's obviously a departure because he's talking. He never did. But the thing that you also have to remember is, like you said, this was a very serious subject matter. Now, granted, it released in 1940, which means it filmed in 38, 39, somewhere around the ballpark. Remember, Poland doesn't get invaded until September of 1939. So, Hitler is chancellor, and he's elected to chancellor. You can quote me, or you can fact check me, but I'm trying to remember. I think it's chancellor in 33, becomes Führer in 34, and then basically you have 5 years of build-up, and you have 5 years of the nationalist
33.
Yeah, chancellor in 33, right? And then rose to power as the Führer in 34.
Yep.
That's what it just said. Damn it.
I know.
But you know, you had the nationalist rhetoric. You had the, you know, the building blocks were there. You could already kind of see what was coming. Well, not kind of. I mean, you could see what was coming if you were paying attention. Now, granted, this was not, you know, there wasn't the 24-hour news cycle, so if you weren't there reporting it,
well,
it's kind of like
you have
North
to understand.
Korea now.
So, if you've ever seen the movie Chaplin, starring Robert Downey Jr., amazing movie. Obviously, there was a bit of creative license involved with the retelling of Charlie Chaplin's life, but one of the elements that was more or less accurate was when it depicted the fact that in the 30s, there were plenty of parties or events involving the Hollywood socialites that were very Nazi sympathetic, because at the time they didn't see the atrocities that were coming. They just saw the rhetoric that seemed very power to the people, and at the time it was very attractive, which also is kind of why it's a little bit ironic that using the rhetoric that was in the movie, and even the rhetoric at the end of the movie in the big speech, which is considered one of the best cinematic speeches of all time, it was such that it actually got J. Edgar Hoover to be utterly convinced that Charlie Chaplin was a communist, because it sounded very communistic in nature, even though that's not what it was. And unfortunately, because of all the other rhetoric going around Hollywood at the time, it was really hard for him to make that point that I'm not trying to be a communist, I'm trying to make this point about authoritarianism. Just because there's some other people in Hollywood that think this way, no, we're not the same. But that didn't make a difference, which is also kind of why this movie debuted to a little bit of success initially, but as it went on, it got worse and worse reviews, and the public turned on them because they were seeing the similarities to what was happening in real life, and they thought this was sympathetic to Hitler. And it wasn't until much later that the general public saw it as a genuine masterpiece.
Yeah, this was definitely one of those kind of, well, like, I think, if I remember right, I think the box office it did was $3 million.
Yeah.
Like, initial box office of $3 million on a budget, I think, of like 1.5 or $2 million, which, hard to think of a movie being made for $1 million nowadays.
I mean, especially when you consider the production value you were getting out of this. I mean, looking at it, it had so much realism to the more diabolical parts. You could really feel the context that was attempting to be given of the dictator that was being parodied.
Right. I'm going to look at something real quick if you want to keep talking.
Yeah. But the other thing...
So it was not... it was nominated for 5 Academy Awards. So it was nominated for Best Actor, Best Picture, Original Score, Supporting Actor, and then Original Screenplay. So this is one of those movies that, like, at the time, when it debuted to quite a bit of fanfare. And then... Yeah.
It turned quick.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, the real thing that, looking back, makes it seem very odd how sympathetic people thought this movie was trying to be to Hitler was when you look at the actual portrayal of Hinkle, which was the the parody Hitler.
Right. Right.
It was clearly showing him as a buffoon. Yes, it was showing him as charismatic.
Hey, Brad?
What?
Hey, just really quick, I don't mean to interrupt you, but did you ever think in your life you would say parody Hitler?
I mean, you and I did grow up on Mel Brooks, so...
Very fair. Okay, touche. Sorry, continue your point, sir.
But, I mean, it just showed such a level of buffoonery to him.
Yeah.
Yes, it definitely showed him as an evil despot, but
Right.
it was clearly showing him as an idiot. And it was not meant to be taken seriously. And yet,
it was very
so
satirical.
many people did. Yeah.
Right. It was satire way ahead of its time. Right.
I mean, it didn't really help that the attempt to break up the seriousness of it really did have a lot of the traditional Charlie Chaplin slapstick.
Right.
But, I mean, the fact that this was a movie that was a modern retelling, essentially, of The Prince and the Pauper, but instead of a poor peasant and a prince, you're talking evil Nazi dictator and Jewish barber with amnesia. I mean, slightly different, but I mean, the differences there do seem very poignant considering the point that was being made.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, look, this is one of those... I think, look, the fact that it's the 80th anniversary, the fact that we're in an election year, and the fact that, well, like, as we watch him... There you go.
Yeah. I mean, you gotta be able to stand up to the Nazis somehow.
Right. Although I don't think they explicitly call them Nazis. I don't remember.
No, they don't. They
we
intentionally
know what's going on.
swapped out the swastika with 2 X's. But I mean, the Jewish part was all still the same.
Yeah.
The behavior, the aesthetic, all there.
Right. Yeah. Look, I think it's, you know, for Jesus. I can't even. As I'm watching this on my computer screen, I can't even.
Yeah. Oh, but you know, there has to be some more humor in there. So, I mean, what better way to show some Nazi humor than frying pan to the head?
Yep. Warner Brothers couldn't have done it better themselves.
And to be fair, I feel like Bugs Bunny did have a frying pan moment with a Nazi at least once. I mean, there were a few of those, so yeah.
Yeah, no, but I think, look, I think this is one of those, like, in the political climate that we're in right now, I think it's very appropriate that we looked at this, you know, and gave it its due for what it is. I mean, you know, this is, like I said, this is one of those that 1997 was basically recognized by the Library of Congress as being something that needs to be preserved till the end of time. Like, I think that should kind of tell you everything that you need to know about the importance of what it is, what it said.
Yeah. I mean, the thing about the premise of this, yes, it was about Hitler. Yes, it was about what's happening at the moment. But realistically, Charlie Chaplin's intent behind this was more than just speaking out against Hitler. It was speaking out against authoritarianism as a general concept, with Hitler just being the latest iteration of that. So this is definitely the kind of movie that you can watch during any major part of history that has extreme political strife, and be able to take something away from it that applies to what you're seeing or experiencing at that moment in time.
Right. Yeah, I agreed 100%.
It is a truly timeless movie, even considering the very time-specific aesthetics.
Right.
So.
Yeah, I think that's very well said. I guess, do we get to get on our soapbox now?
I mean, definitely no comparison to anything happening today, depending on your perspectives. No.
Right. And just, I guess to get on a soapbox, if you do have a different perspective from your friends or the person to your left or your right, you don't have to be a dick about it.
Yeah.
So I think that's one thing that is often forgotten in the political climate of today. You can disagree with somebody and still, love them unconditionally, still think very highly of them. I know several of my friends that I think you and I don't necessarily see eye to eye on a lot of political stuff either, and yet here we are sitting here talking about The Great Dictator on a podcast that we've been doing for, how long have we been doing this now?
3.5 years?
4 years? 3.5
Almost
years,
4?
4 years? Yeah, something in that ballpark. I had hair down to the middle of my back when we started this, so...
That is fair, actually.
I think that should tell you everything you need to know.
Yeah, and I was just down to scruff, so, I mean,
No.
Things change.
You were single?
Semi-single.
Yes.
Technically just dating.
Yeah.
Yeah, early dating.
Yeah. Yeah.
But,
So.
yeah, no, that's actually one of the things that is brought up even in the very last speech of the movie, which is when he talks about the fact that one of the biggest losses as a society is when we focus so hard on advancement and forget that there needs to be an emotional connection, that you have to be able to still have empathy for the people around you. You have to be able to feel what's happening, not just think about what makes the most sense logically, because after a point that gets to an extreme that just hurts everybody. And I mean, obviously the way he put it was much more eloquent than I think I could ever put it. But yeah, no, it is such an amazing movie, and because it did come out 80 years ago, I really don't think enough new people are introduced to it, and they really should, because it is such an amazing piece of cinematic mastery. I mean, just keep in mind, Charlie Chaplin in general revolutionized movie making, because when he started doing silent films, it was still one of those things that was so new. Anything in moving pictures was mind-blowing.
Yep.
He came in and started trying to bring in cohesive storylines, bring in a bit more of a vaudevillian sense of humor that would have more of a purpose, a bit more hard-hitting wit. And then, when he came in with a consistent character from movie to movie to movie to movie, and even started his own movie production that could give him even more creative freedom and just expand the whole concept of the movie-making process by making a devoted movie studio, a consistent cast, a consistent production crew, a consistent process. It single-handedly gave us the movie experience we have today. I mean, yeah, other people were doing something similar at the time, and we would have had some shape of the cinematic climate we have now without him, but it wouldn't be nowhere near as elegant without his contributions.
Yeah, I think that's 100% right. I think when the industry was trying to crawl, he was thinking about walking. When the industry started to walk, he was thinking about running, right? Like, it always seemed like he was 2, 3, 4 steps ahead of where the industry was, and he was one of the driving factors that took the industry to where it ended up and where it is now, right? Like, I mean, everybody was the baby sitting there in front of the dangling keys, and he was the one that was thinking about everything else outside of what was dangling in front of his face.
Hell, I'd be willing to go so far as to say, without Charlie Chaplin, we would have never gotten John Belushi. Or half of the greats from SNL.
Oh, so
Like,
SNL basically before 1988.
there were a few greats in the 90s. Let's
Name
be
them.
fair there.
Name them.
Not nearly as many, but, you know.
Name them.
I hate saying Adam Sandler because so many of his movies bother me, but in fairness, box office says differently.
Actually, I think Sandler's first year was in the 90s, wasn't he?
That's what I said.
Or the 80s. No,
90s.
he was 1990.
Yep.
So he was actually at the turn of the 90s. So I'm gonna give him credit to the 80s.
Oh, ouch. Okay.
I think Farley, David Spade, Norm Macdonald, I think all those guys were around that same
Even
time.
Dana Carvey.
Chris Rock.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Okay, so you had like one group, and that was it.
But yeah, no, there's so much that we got from him, and honestly, I think he doesn't get nearly enough credit, and this movie especially.
No.
I would even be willing to say this movie set the stage for things like, well, The Tonight Show, or Last Week Tonight with John Oliver, or basically any kind of political satire from being possible. Like, without The Great Dictator setting the precedent that a comedian could be political, but not have to be, like, you know, a politician or something similar.
Right, right.
I think you wouldn't have the same kind of comedic climate in that regard.
Well, I think this was also that starting point of, like, you could use satire to make a political point, right?
Yeah.
Like satire could be used to make a political point, or be used to basically kind of go after somebody else's political point. Like, and so doing it to the point where you're a caricature of.
Yeah.
Sure.
So.
Sure, Kyla, you can make a comment since you're just sitting here talking to me while I'm on a live stream. Go ahead. The mic's right there, please, by all means.
Like, what about the modest proposal?
What about it?
Wouldn't that be a start of being a political point using satire when they suggested eating Catholic babies to take care of specifically Irish Catholic babies to take care of the hunger problem that was going on in England at the time?
Can you hear that?
Okay, I think I'm going to need a bit of history refresh.
You never heard of the Modest Proposal? It was a satirical piece that was.
He looks super confused.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean,
Sorry,
hey, it doesn't matter. It's the Irish Catholic.
No, like
Nobody cares
I've
about
heard
it
of
anyway.
a couple things named a Modest Proposal, but eating Irish Catholic babies?
Again, Irish Catholic. Nobody cares.
Wow. Okay.
The Catholics
I
and the
know,
Christians
sure,
are two.
dirty
The
potato
Catholics and the
eaters.
Christians are the
Whatever.
two. Yeah. Well, just if it's Catholics and Christians, you can make fun of them and persecute them all you want, and it's fine. It's fine.
Sorry.
No, don't give me that look, Kyla. That was sarcasm that I was using.
Sure coming from you?
Yes, I'm sure coming from me. I hate everybody but the Catholics and the. I mean, what?
Anyway.
Again, sarcasm, folks.
Sorry for interrupting. Continue.
No, you're fine. No, I think what
But,
she was
yeah.
trying to say was that, satire is a big weapon that can be used against, political discourse and political rhetoric that has, but this is kind of the first big instance where we saw it in the media, or in the medium of film, right?
Yes.
Like, this is the first time that really we saw, and this was something where, like I said, it was, at the time, it was the anti-Semitic, thank you, there's the word, good job, brain, the anti-Semitic supernaturalist, nationalist rhetoric of the Nazi Party kind of rising in Europe and everything. And we as the outside world were looking at it and like, wow, that's really messed up that they're going after people like that. And you had some people that like, yes, it is messed up. I'm going to say something about it. Now, granted, at the time, unfortunately, we didn't know how messed up it was. So I think we would have done more than, we did. But I think in terms of being able to use comedy to poke holes in, a political argument or somebody's beliefs, I think this was one of the first really big examples of that in the medium of film.
Yep.
And like you said, it did pave the way for the guys like John Oliver, like the Jon Stewarts, and that's the host of The Daily Show now.
Trevor Noah.
Oh God, he's such a fucking waste of space.
You have a
back,
censor
Jon
button.
Stewart, I miss you so much.
You
Yeah, but
always
he doesn't
play
deserve a
with it.
censor button. He doesn't deserve a censor button. Trevor
Oh,
Noah,
and of course,
waste of space.
little tidbit. The
Yep.
leading lady, for the surprisingly little amount of screen time that she got in this,
Yeah.
which was Paulette Goddard, Charlie Chaplin's, I believe, final wife. I have to say final because
That sounds
I
right.
believe he had 4, 5.
That sounds right.
Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4. Sorry, she was number 3. She was 3 of 4. Yeah.
So she was his third wife. Yeah, definitely not Irish Catholic with those kind of numbers.
Yep. No. Divorced 2 years after the movie, and he married Una O'Neill a year after that, and then 2 years after that, J. Edgar Hoover got Charlie Chaplin banned from the U.S. So
Which lasted. How long was that?
Ooh, pretty
It was a
long.
while, wasn't it? Yeah.
I think he wasn't allowed back in the U.S. until the 70s.
Was it that long?
Let me see. Let's see. Here we go. All right. I'll find it later. Anyway, so the fact is,
Good job, Brad.
amazing movie. You guys need to see it if you haven't. And for the rest of you who have seen it, tell us down in the comments what you think. Did you like the movie? Did you not? Was there a particular part of it that stood out to you? And, of course, how underrated do you think it is? I know, biased
Incredibly.
question. But,
And
I mean,
I guess
amazing,
we can.
worth your time, honestly.
Absolutely. And I guess this is the point where we get on our soapbox and tell people that if they want to be politically informed, to be politically informed, and if they want to vote, to get out and vote and do their civic duty and all of that fun jazz. Yeah.
I mean, it does feel kind of obligatory at this point, but yes. Obviously, we do have an election coming up soon. Regardless of which side of the political aisle you find yourself on, just remember, as with all elections, your voice does count, no matter what any particular politician says, no matter how futile you think it is because of your faith or lack thereof in our system.
I mean,
If you
it
don't
only
vote,
made us,
you don't really have a right to complain about the results. You got to participate
the system did only
to, help.
100%.
So,
And you can complain about the system all you want. It did only make us the greatest nation in the history of the world. Just gonna sit over here and.
I mean, it ain't great. Don't get me wrong. It's a broken system from any perspective you take. But, I mean, they kind of all are. So, the little bit of real politics that we're going to throw into this whole thing. So,
I mean, we can talk some real politics real quick if you want to.
No.
Don't give me that look.
This isn't Twitter. We don't need to do that.
Well, no, Twitter's actively not letting people talk about politics.
No,
Oh, no, wait,
they
I'm
only
sorry,
let you
just-
talk about politics if you're going to argue politics. If you want to simply talk politics, that's not okay.
Or, well, no, I'm sorry. You can talk politics, you just have to talk about their specific
with that,
ideology.
Guys,
You just can't
before
think
Mike gets on
something
his
different than they do.
soapbox, thank you so much for joining us.
We don't show anything on Twitter. What do I care? I'll go after Twitter all day. What?
Seriously, thank you guys
what's
for
that?
joining us. We actually did have a decent number of people watching us so far. So thank you for that on a Sunday afternoon. Guys, seriously, like we said back at the beginning of this, if this is your first time watching us, please do not forget to like our video and follow us over on Facebook, and like the video and subscribe over on YouTube if you want to see more of our content when it comes out. And of course, we don't really say this too often, but definitely don't forget to turn on notification alerts to find out when our newest live streams or videos come out. And of course, if you want to be able to check out our stuff but don't have time for the videos, the audio of all of our shows can be found over on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcast, and Stitcher.
Just
So,
don't expect to find us on Twitter much. Yeah.
but with that, guys, thank you. Mike,
Yeah.
it's been fun.
Brad, it has been fun.
Till next time.
Yep.
I think we're going to go ahead and leave you on, well, I think the only way we can end this video, considering we spent 37 minutes talking about The Great Dictator and how amazing it was.
Is it a Trump rally?
Just going to skip that. And
Oh, I love pushing your buttons. It's so much fun.
guys, thank you all.
Thank you, everybody.
I'm sorry, but I don't want to be an emperor. That's not my business. I don't want to rule or conquer anyone. I should like to help everyone if possible. Jew, Gentile, black man, white. We all want to help one another. Human beings are like that. We want to live by each other's happiness, not by each other's misery. We don't want to hate and despise one another. In this world, there's room for everyone, and the good earth is rich and can provide for everyone. The way of life can be free and beautiful. But we have lost the way. Greed has poisoned men's souls, has barricaded the world with hate, has goose-stepped us into misery and bloodshed. We have developed speed, but we have shut ourselves in. Machinery that gives abundance has left us in want. Our knowledge has made us cynical, our cleverness hard and unkind. We think too much and feel too little. More than machinery, we need humanity. More than cleverness, we need kindness and gentleness. Without these qualities, life will be violent, and all will be lost. The aeroplane and the radio have brought us closer together. The very nature of these inventions cries out for the goodness in men, cries out for universal brotherhood, for the unity of us all. Even now, my voice is reaching millions throughout the world, millions of despairing men, women, and children, victims of a system that makes men torture and imprison innocent people. To those who can hear me, I say, do not despair. The misery that is now upon us is but the passing of greed, the bitterness of men who fear the way of human progress. The hate of men will pass, and dictators die. And the power they took from the people will return to the people. And so long as men die, liberty will never perish. Soldiers, don't give yourselves to brutes. Men who despise you, enslave you, who regiment your lives, tell you what to do, what to think, and what to feel, who drill you, diet you, treat you like cattle, use you as cannon fodder. Don't give yourselves to these unnatural men. Machine men with machine minds and machine hearts. You are not machines. You are not cattle. You are men. You have the love of humanity in your hearts. You don't hate. Only the unloved hate. The unloved and the unnatural. Soldiers, don't fight for slavery, fight for liberty. In the 17th chapter of St. Luke it is written, the kingdom of God is within man, not one man nor a group of men, but in all men, in you. You, the people, have the power to create machines, the power to create happiness. You, the people, have the power to make this life free and beautiful, to make this life a wonderful adventure. Then in the name of democracy, let us use that power. Let us all unite. Let us fight for a new world, a decent world, that will give men a chance to work, that will give youth a future and old age a security. By the promise of these things, brutes have risen to power, but they lie. They do not fulfill that promise. They never will. Dictators free themselves, but they enslave the people. Now let us fight to fulfill that promise. Let us fight to free the world, to do away with national barriers, to do away with greed, with hate and intolerance. Let us fight for a world of reason, a world where science and progress will lead to all men's happiness. Soldiers, in the name of democracy, let us all unite!